there. So welcome everyone once again. My name is Timothy. I work with Outspace. I've worked with a couple of multinationals in helping them with their large-scale infrastructure. And an MCT. This is a little bit of information about me. I'm a Cloud and DevOps engineer, Microsoft certified trainer. And one of the things I've been doing recently is to actually teach people about cloud, teach people about Azure products to be specific. So that led to the Tech for Good Nigeria community, which I'm pushing at the moment. And also, just to get people upskilled, I partnered with Old School Africa to provide scholarship funds to students that want to get tutored in cloud engineering. I don't know if anybody has heard of Cloud Old School Africa. So those are the things I do on the site, and you're welcome. So the topic once again is securing CI/CD with Azure security in GitHub Actions. So these are the things we'll cover today. We'll talk about Azure security integration. We'll talk about identity management with secrets management. We'll talk about artifact security. And also we do a little bit of demo to see how these things come together and how this thing come in place. So prior to now, I think a couple of years ago, I'm sure everybody heard the news when Microsoft actually purchased GitHub. It was a very good news because most of us knew that GitHub was going to get a lot of features and a lot of improvements since Microsoft has taken over. And if you're familiar with the Azure platform, you probably would have heard of Azure DevOps pipeline and all. That was a proprietary Microsoft CI/CD pipeline before Microsoft acquired GitHub. So most of the improvements have been going into GitHub right now, although there are still some changes that goes into Azure DevOps. But most of the improvements, most of the new features have been going into GitHub Actions, which is why you hear so many news, you hear so many things about GitHub Actions around everywhere. Though there are still some pipeline tools, I'm sure some of us, maybe you've heard of Jenkins, you've heard of GitLab, you've heard of Bitbucket. Those are other tools, CI/CD tools, but a lot of companies, a lot of people are migrating into GitHub Actions, which is why this topic is coming with respect to security in GitHub Actions. Although we'll be focusing around Azure, which is what this session is all about. But if you, at the end of the day, whatever knowledge you get, if you are interested in any other cloud service provider, you can take that knowledge into those spaces and you can use them to do what you want to do. So Azure security. Why is this important? Why is this necessary for us at this point in time? So like I said, GitHub Actions is what everybody's using now. If you get to any startup, if you get to anybody trying to do anything CI/CD, the first thing they think of, oh, since we have a source code in GitHub, why not just use GitHub Actions? You know, it makes the collaboration easier. It makes you do things in one space and not having to go to so many places, which is why you hear so many activities on GitHub Actions these days. So now it is the modern backbone of GitHub, of CI/CD. So teams are doing a whole lot of things. And even like I said, Azure has started to bring in more features into it. And we'll talk about those things. We'll talk about the security. Now, the security part, you know, when you are doing a whole lot of things, I've worked with developers in the past. I've worked with support people in the past. Sometimes I've been the middleman, and sometimes I've been on both ends of the spectrum. And I've seen how different teams get different perspective about security. The way a developer thinks about security is different from the way a DevSecOps person would think about security. The way an auditor would think about security is different from the way a developer will also think about security, and also probably somebody on the support end of things. So people's understanding of security varies. People's understanding of people's perspective of security varies. But if you are in the DevOps space, you are the cloud engineer or cloud administrator, you would be able to understand security on both ends. Like I said, you are like the middleman for both the developer and the people on the other side of the business, which is why we should be security conscious whenever we are deploying anything, whenever we are doing anything in our cloud environment, because it is an online platform. You know, back in those days, before somebody can actually get into your system, back in those days when companies were running on-prem systems, before somebody can easily hack into your system, it's probably because, or maybe the person got access to your network, the person is in your vicinity, so the person can do some of those things. But nowadays, most of these tools, most of these things we are doing, they are online, which is why we need to be security conscious. When you keep your secrets, you need to be security conscious. Who has access to your system, you need to be security conscious. Who you give a certain level of access, you need to be security conscious. And like every cloud provider always preach, like every cloud engineer will always preach, like every DevOps engineer will always preach, you only give access to what is needed. Try to avoid blanket access as much as you can, which is one of the core foundations of cloud security, whether in Azure, AWS, or but in Azure, it is one of the core security that we need to be aware of. Now, this meeting basically is for if you're a DevOps engineer, if you're a site-related engineer, if you're a cloud security engineer, even if you're a developer or if you're an auditor, wherever you are, as long as you are security, you work with things that has to do with security, you're concerned about security of the environment, this session is for you. So, what's the foundation of security in cloud environment? It has to do with identity and access. Now, we are not getting to GitHub Actions yet. We're not getting to CI/CD pipeline yet, but I'm just trying to give you an overview of what security is all about. So in the cloud environment, in your cloud space, in your cloud provider, whatever cloud provider you're using, your identity and the access that is attached to that identity is key. So when you create a user, when you add a user to your directory, what level of permission are you giving to that person? How are you taking care of the permission? How are you monitoring the permission? How are you following up with the permission? How are you tracking the permission? How are you auditing the permission? In a CI/CD pipeline, you bring in the same mindset. Although this is not a human being, this is not a human being that you're working with. This is a tool. And because it's a tool, you need to bring the same mindset and you need to be security conscious when you're doing this. So just as you do identity management to a human being, in your pipeline, you also need to do identity management. Now, prior to now, I'm sure before now, most of us, when we want to do anything on Azure, we want to integrate with any tool outside the Azure ecosystem, whatever tool it is, probably Azure-native, but it's not Azure-native. You use something called a client secret and a client ID. Sure, some of us, if you check your notepad or you check probably your clipboard, there's a secret somewhere in there that you probably kept there because you don't want to forget or because you don't want to miss it. You want to easily have access to it. So this secret, if anybody get access to it, that person can have access to your environment. So because of these vulnerabilities, because of these issues, because of these problems that have been coming up around client ID and secrets, Azure decided to create something called federated identities. Now, federated identities mean you have just an identity that has to connect to your Azure environment, to connect to your directory, to get token, to connect back to whatever resource he wants to do. So at this point in time, you don't need a password. Just come, it authenticates you. Okay, this person has been authenticated from this particular source. Okay, fine, you're good to go. Do whatever you want to do. That way, you don't misplace secrets. You don't keep secrets in places that you don't understand. You don't forget secrets. And somebody somewhere doesn't have access to your secret. Federated identity is key when you're doing GitHub Actions. I'm going to show us how important it is when you're using federated identity in GitHub Actions. It is the most secure identity or access management you can have for your GitHub Actions or for your pipeline, because it has a very granular level of security. So if you want to limit that authentication to just a branch, let's say, for example, in your GitHub environment, you have 10 branches, or normally developers will always create branches, right? And then you have your deployment branch, you have your main branch, you have your dev branch, you have all those kind of branches. You can limit this kind of identity, which is the federated identity. You can limit it to just a single branch, such that if anybody wants to authenticate or if anybody wants to trigger a workflow outside of that branch, it doesn't authenticate. It bounces it. you can limit the authentication to pull request. So you created a workflow that is triggered by a pull request. That is when you do some certain things in the Azure ecosystem. You can limit this particular identity to just pull request. So if there's any GitHub ref that is not a pull request, it will not authenticate that federated identity, which is why I'm saying it is the most secure level of access you can give to any integration. And Microsoft or Azure has worked so much on it that it suits well for GitHub Actions. So it uses the OpenID Connect, which, like I said, has to do with authentication tokens. You get your permissions, get your refresh, everything is kept somewhere, and you get your permission scope, which is what we're talking about here. You have your permission scope where that particular ID is limited to. So like I said, I'll be showing us a demo on how to configure this and limit an application registration or an enterprise registration to just a particular ref or a particular trigger in your GitHub action, just to be so secure. So we proceed. Now, so how do you set up a workload identity federation? You create an Azure app registration. You configure the federated credentials by just usually making it a what's it called, service principal. You assign the roles to it, then you connect it to your workflow. It's as simple as that. Just 3 steps will help you. Those are the 4 simple steps to creating a federated identity to authenticate against your GitHub actions or your GitHub pipeline. You don't need to keep your secrets anywhere, because sometimes when you have your GitHub environment, you have different teams in your GitHub, you have different rules and permissions that you must have set up in your GitHub. There's a possibility somebody that is not even a DevOps engineer, or that is not even doing anything in the cloud. Maybe there was a mistake in the permission that was assigned to that person, and that person goes to your GitHub settings and the person can see your GitHub secrets. And like I said, most of these things are online. There are vulnerabilities that come out online. There are attacks that happen on these platforms, which is why it is not good to use this secret approach. And the interesting thing about federated identity is that it is easy to manage. If you notice somebody doing anything, you can easily just click delete on that particular identity or on that particular scope, and automatically it blocks access from that scope to your Azure environment. So this is an example. Assuming you've configured your you've configured your federated identity, which is you creating your app registration or your enterprise application. The only thing you need to use to authenticate into your Azure ecosystem is your client ID, your tenant ID, and your subscription ID. That is it. As you can see, there's nothing like client secret in it. You don't need your client secret. And once that authenticates against your workflow, you can use it to deploy resources. You can use it to do anything you want to do. So this is a structured way of what it looks like. And then we'll get into that. When we get into the demo, I'll show you how it works. The other part is secret management. If there are DevOps engineers on this call, if there are cloud engineers on this call, if there are developers on this call, I want to assume some of us have been in a scenario where your application, your app settings file, so to say, I work with .NET a lot, so that's what I'm saying, app settings. It might be your .env file. Your .env file is just housing your secrets, and it's there in your GitHub environment. It's there in your GitHub repository. These things are not supposed to be. So what you can do in Azure, you can keep those secrets in Keyboard. There's something I didn't add to this slide, which is Azure App Configuration. Azure App Configuration is it's another tool that Azure has created. You can create your app settings in there such that it doesn't even reside in your repository. Whenever you want to deploy, you just reference the key value from your app configuration or from your keyboard, and then you rotate the keys or you replace the tokens in the pipeline, and automatically those things are there. That way, you are not exposing secrets, you are not exposing integration credentials, you are not exposing what you're not supposed to expose. And if the auditors on this call, some of us would have felt like, oh, who kept this secret in this repository? Why is this authenticated? Sometimes you are authenticating with, you are integrating with a very a very secure application, or let's say a very security conscious platform, let's say a card payment system, and you don't want to keep your API authentication keys in your GitHub repository, that is not secure. That is not the whoever gets access to it can see it. So just these keyboards use to manage your secret. You can, whenever you want to deploy, just fetch those secrets into your pipeline, and then you deploy. The interesting thing about GitHub Actions or deployment pipeline is that every time you spin up something, it creates a runtime environment for you. And once you're done with that runtime environment, that environment is destroyed. So whether you replace tokens in that environment or whether you replace tokens in that runtime environment, it is destroyed. So which is why we advise people to use security management with keyboards. So proceeding. Now, how do you implement secure secret access? You store your secret in a keyboard. You authenticate with managed identity. Remember what we said about identities. You should give least privilege to whatever it is you're doing. And when you're using managed identity, you're not using passwords, you're not using usernames. You're using Azure secured identities that you can use to retrieve these things. So you study, like I said, you store the secret in the keyboard, you authenticate with the keyboard. Then during the runtime, while you are deploying, that is when you fetch these secure values into your deployment pipeline. You inject it into your application. Once that is done, the GitHub Actions automatically destroys that runtime environment. Now, this is the most interesting part. A lot of us that you deploying, probably you're working with infrastructures, you're working with systems, you use infrastructure as a code. You probably use Terraform, you probably use Bicep, PowerShell, whatever it is you use to deploy. Also, there are times that in your infrastructure as a code or your template, there are some keys that are exposed. There are some things that are not supposed to be there. There are some policies that have been set just because you just want to deploy something. Sometimes I do it also. I'm not saying I'm only here. Sometimes which is why we have this thing, that sometimes you speed up things, you forget things, and then you just write the template, you write the file, and you deploy. It is when you have security practices in place like this that it will catch it and tell you, oh, you made a mistake somewhere, you violated a policy, you're not supposed to do this, but you're doing this, change it. There was a time that there was something I was doing some time ago. I was just testing. That was when I started Terraform actually. You know, interestingly, as huge as Terraform is, if you deploy something to an environment and you mistakenly change the location, maybe it's East-US, and somebody mistakenly added 2 to it and changed it to East-US 2. If you run that template, if you do a plan, which is the safest and secure way, if you do a plan, when the plan executes, it's going to tell you that, oh, you want to destroy all these resources. Why? Because just the location value has changed. And Terraform works with state files. If it notices that, okay, you deployed 10 resources, everything has regions allocated to it, and somebody mistakenly changed it from ECS to ECS2, Terraform is going to see all those resources as tainted resources, and it's going to delete them to try to recreate them. So things like this, these are the security practices that Azure Security helps you to do when you're deploying, when you're trying to run infrastructure as a code. You can set your policies in your Azure, integrate it with GitHub Actions, such that when you want to run it, it tells you that, oh, you're violating the policy that you already set in Azure, and it helps you, it saves you this stress. I'm sure nobody wants to delete the whole environment on this go. Yes, it's a nightmare. So you can scan your infrastructure as a code. You can also scan your container images. You know, sometimes you just write a Docker file. You are not deploying a huge application. You just write a Docker file, you run, you copy, then you build, you send it in. But the image you're using, you probably don't know that that image has some vulnerabilities within it. You just packaged it and then You tested it on your local, it worked. Most of us, it works on our local. I understand that. You tested it on your local, it works. But when you're taking it to a production environment, you don't want to take something that has vulnerabilities into your production environment, which is where you can use tools in Azure Security to scan the images that you built, just to make sure that they are not violating some CVE that has been published out there. You see those things and you can remediate, you change, and then you deploy. These are ways to secure your pipeline. These are ways to secure your organization before you get into the production environment. So when you're doing that, you just started code analysis. Those are the things you do. You do your IAC security scanning. You validate your infrastructure as a code against your policies. You do your container vulnerability scanning, and then you check your compliance of your deployment. So the interesting part, this is the main part, which is the Microsoft Security DevOps, acronym MSDO. So in Microsoft Vendor for Cloud, there's a tab there called DevOps Security. Azure has been able to integrate tools that you can integrate into your pipeline to report into that section for you to see things that are going on in your environment. Sometimes, probably you're a DevOps engineer, you don't want your auditors or your security guys to even have access to your GitHub environment, but they are pestering you that we need to see what you're doing, we need to see what you're deploying. That is a platform for you. It's like a dashboard that you can connect to your pipeline, and then they can see whatever it is they want to see. You can also go there to see whatever it is you want to see, just to make sure that your environment, whatever it is you're deploying, is up to date. Just as a confirmation, I hope everybody is still hearing me. Before I proceed.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So if you have any questions, like I said, you can drop it in the chat. You can pen it down till after the session. Then you ask, can we do justice to your questions? So this is in Microsoft Security DevOps. You can integrate it, like I said, to Azure DevOps. You can integrate it to GitHub Actions. And Microsoft are already doing things. Microsoft are already doing integrations with other tools to make it easy to use this same platform. One thing I love about Microsoft is that once Microsoft gets access to some things, they make it so easy that you can migrate from whatever it is you're using into Azure, into their product. I don't know if anybody has done any GitHub migrations recently. I was part of a GitHub migration recently, and we moved from GitLab to GitHub Actions. It was smooth because there's a tool called GitHub Enterprise Importer. Just connect it. Once you get to your GitHub, just create the scripts, run it on your environment, and it pulls everything for you into GitHub Actions. So that's why Microsoft is also making this tool available for any platform, any pipeline you're using, and you can also integrate with it. So this is an example of a MSDO GitHub workflow. As you can see, it is as simple as this. Right? This is the action that you're using. Microsoft Security DevOps Action. He has some other tools. I'll be dropping some links for us in the chat where we can read more about this, where we can get more information about this. If you want to integrate it into your environment, just to learn how to use it, I'll be dropping those links for us in the chat. But this is just a plain example of what the action looks like if you want to integrate the Microsoft Security DevOps Action into your pipeline. Although there are other tools that you can use, there are dependables, there are Git Guardian tools, all those things, you can do them and also integrate them into your GitHub Actions. But for the ones that Microsoft has been able to create, we'll be seeing that shortly on how to integrate those things. So end to end, this is basically what your workflow should look like. This is basically what your workflow should look like. You commit. Once the commit comes in, you scan it. You make sure that you're scanning properly. Whatever it is you're scanning, make sure that scanning is good to write. I mean, that's proper, what's it called? access, then you get your secret whatever you want to do. You can also sign, what's it called? You can also sign your images, your artifacts. If you don't want it to miss, I'm sure some of us, when we are working with artifacting repository, you see some sharp comments there. That's long string. It's a kind of signature on that particular thing, such that on that particular image, such that it is something you can use to verify the authenticity of that image. If it changes, then you are not verifying against the same image. So this is basically what your workflow should look like. Now, we're moving to the demo just to show us a brief example of what it looks like. So this is, please, apologies, let me just increase this. Don't mind me, I'm always used to having everything on my screen. So this is, I have my VS Code on the side. If you can see what my workflow looks like on the side, and I'll show you what Azure DevOps looks like in the security DevOps looks like in Microsoft. So when you come to Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you will see some overview, and if you want to easily connect to it, you come to DevOps security. So once you click on DevOps security, you can add a new. I've connected my what's called my repository to it, but I'll just show you a step-by-step scenario of what it looks like if you want to connect. So you click on this. As you can see, there's integration into GitHub, Azure DevOps, and GitLab. So if you click on GitHub, it asks you what do you want to call your connection in. I can just call it, let me say, demo for 97. Oh, sorry, that's GitHub. As you can see, most of these things, you are not using passwords, you are not using secrets. These things are available for you to easily integrate with. So this is a demo connector. I'm just going to put it in one of my demo, what's it called, resource groups. And the interesting thing about the connector is it has some regions that it is not yet available, right? But your connector in each of those major regions, you have one. As you can see, there is one in Canada Central, although you don't have in Canada East, but it's Canada Central, which means it's available in Canada region. There's one in the US, there's East US, although there's no East US too, there's North Europe, there's West Europe. So there is at least one region available for you to create. Although my own resources in this particular environment, they are in East US too, but I'm just going to create my connector in East US. Then you click on next to select the capabilities. Do you want to give it full sentence, or what do you want to enable? As you can see, there are code scanners. You want to links, you want to use bandits. I will share a link, I will show you what each of these things does. These are code scanners. Developers on this call know what lint is all about. If you are using lint, maybe you're writing a TypeScript code and you're linting it. Lint actually helps you when you're doing a lot of JavaScript and all. You can set conditions on what to pick, what not to pick, what to flag, what not to flag. So these are the things you can set. You want to set scanners, you want to set infrastructure as a code scanner, or you just want to set open source scanner for dependency scanning. So these are the tools that are available right now. This IAC, you can use it for Terraform, you can use it for PowerShell, you can use it for Bicep, you can use it for any of those things. So once you define the scope, you save it, then I'm just going to leave it as full access. Then the next part is where you configure your permissions to it. So normally, if you want to authenticate against your repository or your the branch, or let's say the organization, you should have a level of permission. If you have at least an administrative permission on that particular organization to connect, not on the repository right now. You know, your repository is inside your organization, maybe your organization is even inside your enterprise. But on the top parents, at the top parent level, you should at least have access to have an administrative access to it. So I'm just going to try to authorize this against my GitHub. Because I have GitHub opened in another tab, that was why authenticated for me like that. If I didn't have GitHub connected, or if I had actually cleared my cache or deleted my GitHub token in my browser, it would have taken me 2-3 steps of connecting to GitHub itself. Does the what's it called, 2FA and everything. We don't need secrets, you don't need client secret and password for all those things. Then the next thing is it's going to install the DevOps security app. I've already installed this on my repository. If I should go into my repository here and I come to settings. So when I come to settings and I come to GitHub apps, you can see I've integrated my Microsoft Security DevOps tool in here. It's already configured. If I uncheck it, I can easily install it again. Now, once it's installed, if I click on this, it's going to tell me it's already installed. Then it comes back. Oh, sorry. This is there. Oh. So let me just bring it forth. So I'm going to, it's already configured. I have all these things on my PC. So let me just get my token. This is another level of security. I'm sure I want to believe most of us on this call already have 2FA enabled on our GitHub profiles. So 560. So this is just me showing you how to install it. And then it's going to ask you, what's your repositories? I have so many repositories in my organization, but right now I'm only limiting it to one. Let's just say I want to add another repository. Let me add my open source repository. So once I add this, I can save. And then it tells me it's installed. So what do I want the connector to be doing in case I just want to edit the settings on my Azure DevOps? I don't have to go to most of those things. I can just come here and review and generate, create. As you can see, it's authorized, it's installed, then it creates. This creation process is going to take at least 10 minutes, but I'm going to skip that because I've already configured that into my system. And so that is basically how you connect your DevOps security to your organization. Easy click. Now, the most interesting part is what now happens, how do you scan? What kind of scanning do you put into your system? So somebody's already said, no, this guy has some problem with this infrastructure. I said, yes, I have 12. For the sake of this demo, I have 12. Just want to show you how these things work. So this is already connected. Now, if I should go into my pipeline. Okay, so let's just see one of the findings, right? So that we can fix it together, which is one thing now. That is connected to my GitHub repository. If I go into my GitHub repository, you see my IAC in here where it did the scanning. This is my infrastructure. I have my, so yeah, most important thing, let's not forget, your repository has to be either an enterprise repository because you need a license on it, or it's a public repository. So if you want to use a private repository, Azure doesn't have a license for you to integrate Microsoft Security for DevOps. It's either you are paying for it as an enterprise, or you open your repository as a free user. You can't keep your repository private because, of course, Azure wants to do some things and authenticate some things against your repository. So that is not allowed. So this is my infrastructure, and I have this. This is just deploying keyboards. It is deploying a container instance. And one of the things that okay, let me just show you what the pipeline looks like. So I created this infrastructure deploy pipeline, which, as you can see, I'm using my OIDC. I'm not using secrets and client IDs. I'm using OIDC to connect to Azure, and as you can see, this is the place where I authenticate. And based on my configuration, based on my file, what I try to do is I try to make my workflow flexible for me to set my backend configuration in case I have different subscriptions that I want to connect to and deploy things to. I don't want to encode that in my TFR. So here I can easily select the variables from my GitHub and manipulate it. Then I have the Terraform check, I have the init and all like that. And this is the actions that for infrastructure. Oh, sorry, I deleted that. Well, let's just run it. Trust me, nothing's going to break, hopefully. So while this is running, while the workflow is running, so that we'll see the scan results, while the workflow is running, let me show you how to easily create a federated identity. It is easy and straightforward. So usually you go to your Entra. You can go to Entra, or you just go to your app registration directly. But I'm going to start from Microsoft Entra. So from Microsoft Entra, I can create an enterprise application.
Sorry for interrupting you, Timothy. Just a request from the audience, please.
Okay.
Someone has just asked if we can change your theme to light theme, just for better to light theme for better visibility.
Sorry.
If possible.
Okay, so we're going to change it. Don't mind me, I like seeing everything on my screen. So if it's really dark, please don't. We're going to turn this off to lights, and hope this is fine for everybody. Let me refresh this.
Yes, I think it's better.
Oh, yeah. Okay, just for this session, I want to change back. Okay, that's all. Okay, this is floating. Oh, okay. So I probably have this in my settings. So appearance. Yes. So if you go to Entra ID, you see, go to Entra ID, then go to Enterprise Applications. You click on New. They ask you what you want to go through the Microsoft Entra ID gallery. Then you create your own application. What do you want to call it? I want to call it, let's call it demo GitHub app. Now, how do you want to authenticate? Do you want to register it as an application to integrate into Microsoft ID? Because like I said, you need to authenticate to the Entra ID. So you can just select that, then you create. You don't need your redirect URI because you're not doing most of those things. When you do your federated identity, when you do your federated what's it called, identification, that's going to be available for you. So that is creating in the background. If that is done, let's come back to enterprise applications. So this is it here, demo GitHub connection. Once you click on it, the next thing you go is you go to you can go to the app registration page. Sorry. So you can go to the app registration page. After you have submitted the app, go to the app registration page. You go to all applications, then you see the new app we just created, demo GitHub app. Once you click on it, you go to your secret section. Don't worry, we're not creating secrets. You go to your secret section, you see federated credentials. This is where you can now add a federated identity. What scenario do you want to configure? Azure has been able to create things for you that you can easily connect your GitHub Actions. If you want to connect the Kubernetes environment to it, you have that option. Or you can also use your GitHub Actions to deploy Azure resources. So we choose GitHub Actions. And as you can see, automatically it has created the issue for you when it's going to get your token. Now, what is your organization name? This is my organization name. What is the name of my repository? I'm going to call it sorry, let me get that wrong here. So, again, this is the name of my repository. Then now entity type. How granular do you want to give access to that entity, that particular identity? Do you want to give access to it just at the branch level, or just at the environment level, or you want to limit it to pull request only? But because most of us, we tend to do deployment from main branch or dev branch or prod branch or deploy branch, you can just limit it to your main branch just for ease. What is the name of the branch? Whatever it is, maybe you're using deploy or dev, or in my own case, it is called main. As you can see, it has created a subject identifier. So anything that doesn't match this ref will not authenticate this GitHub. Not authenticate this particular credential. So just going to give it a name, just an identifier. Let's say Azure security main branch. And then you got, that's all you need. That is everything you need. So you can configure as many branches as you want, as many pull requests as you want. And remember, I said, if you want to delete it, it is so easy. Just come here. You don't need it again, or somebody has access, or somebody's trying to do what they're supposed to do. Imagine you're in an enterprise organization that you have close to 100 repositories. You can't be tracking secrets across each of those repositories. This is the easiest way to actually do that. And if you don't need it anymore, just click this delete button and it's gone. So that is how you create your ID. And then to come back to this menu, you can see your client ID, which is what you use, your tenant ID, and the subscription you want to authenticate it again. So when you want to authenticate again the subscription, that is when you then go into maybe your Entra to give that particular application. You want to give it maybe a contributor role on your subscription. You can just click it, you assign it a role, you assign it whatever it is you want to assign it, because it is a what's it called? It is an ID already for you as well. So that's how you create that. Quickly, I'm just going to show you. So this is my deploy infrastructure, and like I showed you the other time in my workflow file, I've integrated a scanning feature into it. It is going to scan my Terraform file. As you can see, I have a step here, which is to run checkoff scan. Remember when we were creating the connector the other time, it told us that checkoff is what you use to scan your infrastructure as a code. So this is the output of the scan, but trust me, this is too much for you to read, and it is quite a lot for you to understand. You can just come into your dashboard. Remember, we connected that repository to our Defender for Cloud. If you come into Defender for Cloud and you go to the security tab, let's just wait for this to load. So if you go to your DevOps security tab, the output of that checkoff scan, you see it in your dashboard. It's going to tell you all the things it was able to pick. It's going to categorize it based on criticality. As you can see, I don't have anyone critical, but I have to that are high. If you click on this particular connection, you can go more into it to see what they actually picked. So just waiting for this to load. So on this tab, you see recommendations. On this tab, you see alerts, you see secret. As we scanned, what's it called? If I was trying to deploy and it did a secret scanning, and somehow in my repository saw some secrets, I'll see them in the secret tab. So just for the infrastructure as a code scanning, it's been able to pick something. It said, okay, GitHub repositories, you have infrastructure as code scanning, findings resolved. What are the findings? Let's see the findings. I will try to resolve one as quick as possible, just to show you how this thing can help you to keep your environment secure by integrating it into your workflow. So if you go to findings, as you can see, I have some high findings in here. It says expiration date to be set on all secrets. So in my, let me also maximize this. That was too small. Sorry about that. Yep. I hope that is big enough for anybody to see. So I'm just going to go into my Terraform, and as you can see, I created some secrets into this, but I didn't add expiry date into it, which is what it is picking for me. And interestingly, if you click on this, if you click on that finding, and then you see URLs in here, it will tell you to direct you to the particular file in your entire repository. Imagine you have a large repository of infrastructure as a code. You can start looking for where is this thing, where can I see it, where is it in my file. If you click on view affected file, it's going to take you to that file that is affected, and it's going to highlight where the issue is for you. So this is loading. As you can see, it's brought me to line 53, saying I created a secret, but I didn't put an expiry date to it. Same thing for this, same thing. This is the secret, and that's then the next one. You also go into maybe pick another one. Let's pick someone else, another one that is not repository. It says ensure container instance should be configured with managed identity. Okay, where did I configure that? I remember creating what's it called? Container instance, or just tell me where it is so that I can easily make the change. If you click on that, it's going to tell you, okay, this is where you're creating the container instance. And when you look through it, you can see that I actually did not create a managed identity, right? So I'm violating some policies that have been set. Now, these policies are Azure policies that have been set in my Azure estate. Now, sometimes, you have some kind of policies that you set for your resources. Like I mentioned the other time, maybe you want to set a location resource on some particular things, and when you're trying to deploy, you want to catch that such that it doesn't even get into your deployment. This is how you add policies to your security. So I'm going to go back to the security tab, and I'm going to go into environment settings. So where normally you have securities, you have policies that are restricted to subscriptions or on the tenant group level. So I'm going to go into my subscription, and I can see the policies available. So these are policies. If I click on it, you can see recommendations. These are like policies that are in my Azure subscription at the moment. So in case you have any policy, any custom policy that you've set, you can easily create it as a standard, such that whenever your pipeline or your CI/CD is running against it, you can validate that, okay, what I'm deploying is not against my policy. So you can select any policy to add to that environment. And once you create standard, so if you try to create standard, just a quick workflow, you can call it whatever it is named. I just call it demo standard. Security guys love this. So you have standard, you can give it a description, then you select all the policies, whatever policies it is you might have created. Let's assume this is a custom policy for me. I can select this policy, go to next, review and create, then I create it. So automatically it has attached that policy to that subscription for me in my DevOps security tab. So anytime I'm trying to do anything in DevOps, maybe that policy was related to infrastructure as a code, I can run it against it, and if it violates it, I will see it in my what's it called? My DevOps security tab. It's going to tell me that, oh, you created this policy, but somebody in your environment, or maybe you are the same person, you are trying to violate it. So that is how you create policies and you assign policies to it. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the time and I want to have questions. So I'm sorry I might not be able to show us how to actually remediate this, but you could see that it's easy to remediate. It's easy to find because it's going to tell you where in your file you made a mistake. So you can come to your source code or your infrastructure. If it's a secret, if it's a container, you can see where the error is and then you mitigate it. Really time conscious, so I didn't want to take your time. If anybody has any question, so that I can easily take them, and if it's going to involve us solving something together, I'll do that. Thank you very much for listening. So key takeaways, please don't use, please, after today, don't use client secret anymore. I can see the poll. Please don't use client secret. You can easily configure the federated identity. And so if anybody has any feedback or if you want to reach out to me, my LinkedIn page is on the, what's it called, is on the invite on Meetup. You can reach out to me. If you have any question, I'll let you know. And if anybody has any question in this call, please. Okay, I can see Albert. I think Albert has a question.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. I believe you can hear me well.
Yes, I can, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that insightful session, the sharing, and also that demo on how we can enable that DevOps security and Defender for Cloud, and also a view on the findings and how people can remediate it. My question, it won't be that technical. It's just about in terms of the product future, the future of the product. In this case, I see Microsoft of late, they have been putting more focus on GitHub side. That we see you have the GitHub Copilot and everything as compared to the effort that is being put in Azure DevOps. I see these two products are being managed by one. They're all Microsoft products. But from your standpoint, how will you say for developers or maybe the cloud engineers in terms of if someone is in terms of learning and also in terms of the usage, could do myself, I think that Microsoft is putting more effort on the GitHub side in terms of the future development, feature development of the product as compared to Azure DevOps. And also this one, if they are focusing on that, does it mean that you seeing at one point, will they drop the Azure DevOps, or will that maintain that? They will maintain it and continue focusing on GitHub? Or how will you advise for someone who is learning and is trying to align? Yeah.
Okay, so my advice to anybody, if anybody tells me in 2026 that I want to get into DevOps, the first thing I just say is please learn GitHub. Because eventually everybody's going to get into GitHub, whether they like it or not, right? Azure itself has been taking out some, Azure has limited feature developments on Azure DevOps itself because they bought GitHub for, let's say that you bought GitHub for a large money, you won't be running those two products, you want to focus on one. And because everybody's already in GitHub, Azure has given more focus to development with GitHub and DevOps with GitHub. So most of these features are going into GitHub. Like I said, there's a tool called GitHub Enterprise Importer, right? Which you can use to migrate from Azure DevOps into GitHub. So if you're learning, I would advise you to, if you're a developer or wherever, I would advise you to take GitHub. Although if you have the prior knowledge of Azure DevOps, yes, it is good. You can easily integrate it because it is similar. The syntax and everything is similar. You can easily integrate it with GitHub. Or if you're just learning, I would just advise you to stick to GitHub because, interesting, like I mentioned, I was part of a migration exercise some minutes ago. There are people nowadays that their title is GitHub migration experts, right? I met a couple of them. I met like two guys in Spain and Portugal. They are called GitHub migration experts because companies are moving into GitHub. Okay. So I'll just
okay, interesting. And also you've mentioned that there's that tool that you can use to migrate from Azure DevOps to GitHub.
Yes, so
we don't have the tool that you can use the other way if I want to move from GitHub to Azure DevOps.
No, you can move from GitHub to Azure DevOps. So this is it. This is called GitHub Enterprise. Where to drop the link? Enterprise. Okay.
Because I remember the other time that I checked, there was no tool that I can use to, maybe if I want to migrate Azure DevOps pipeline from one Azure DevOps to another, suppose maybe there is a change in tenant or anything. So I did not get a tool that I can use to migrate those Azure DevOps pipeline, but it is interesting to say that they have a tool that can be used to migrate from GitHub to, from DevOps to GitHub.
Yes.
So that one is a
and
interesting one in terms of the product future.
Yes, as you can see, you can connect it to GitHub, you can connect it to Bitbucket, you can connect it to Azure DevOps, you can connect it to so many tools, actually. You can connect it to GitLab. Last one I worked on was GitLab. Right. So I'll just advise that you do that. like the person I work with has mastered this entire process. So that is why it's making money. And because eventually Microsoft is going to force everybody into it. And if you're familiar with Microsoft, they give you a warning ahead, maybe like a year. If they're nice enough, they give you a year ahead and tell you that, okay, please, everybody move out of the space. And we don't have a choice. So I'm dropping some links in the chats. Sorry, Albert, hope I was able to answer your question.
Yeah, that is clear. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Nice to know that. So I'm dropping some links in the chat in case you want to know more about the Azure security. You can just go to those links, and there are other links in there that will give you more information about that.
I would like to drop a quick question, Timothy.
Yes,
first of all, thanks for that. This session, it has been really insightful. Myself, and even like I said, from the polls, not a lot of people. There's actually no one who has been using the Identity Federation. It's also something that I've noticed even when it comes to Kubernetes side, and we are all moving towards that as the safest way to secure secrets. But now, as you are creating the connector, that region settings.
Yes.
The question would be, what actually lives in that region? For example, if you select now East US, and when you say it's not available, or in other regions, or in Africa, for example, when you build that connector, what lives in that region, and does it affect maybe the data does it pull your data to that region that you select in any way?
So no, it doesn't. So your what's it called? Your connector is just something like a link, right? A link between Defender for Cloud and your repository. So where is your repository residing? I'm sure most of us don't have answer to that, but we just know that we are connecting to GitHub. We don't know where in GitHub, or we don't know wherever GitHub is hosting that. So it's just a connector. It's just a link between your repository and Defender for Cloud. It's a link to your dashboard, right? So it's not as if your data is residing there, or you have something residing there. No, it's not like that, because your Defender for Cloud is a global resource, right? So it's just a link in between your repository and what's it called? Defender for Cloud. It's just the pipeline. Let me call it that. That's why it is called a connector. Most connectors are just links between two things. If you have two integrations and you have a connector between it, let's say, for example, you're setting up Logic App and there's a connector between it. Maybe you're setting up App connector. It is just something to connect this end of the integration to that end of the integration. It doesn't mean your Outlook data is in wherever the connector is living. Hope I was able to answer that, Samson. Hello?
Oh, sorry, you could. I was talking to myself.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. All right, I was saying, so yeah, you've answered the question. Though now a follow-up, I was following through as you were doing your connection, and the only difference is mine. I was doing it. I now made the connection to Azure DevOps, and then the reason because you choose a resource group for when you are creating a connector there. But then something I've noticed is in that resource group, nothing really gets created around maybe that shows maybe there's a connector or something. So I'm just wondering, let's say if someone is doing a cleanup of the environment and there was that connector created, is it something that will it affect the setup in any way? And that's why I was asking what will be living in that region, because I'm assuming it could be a representation of that resource in the resource group that you've chosen, but I'm not seeing anything in the resource group.
Yes, so that particular connector is maxed out. It's what's it called? It's shielded from you. You don't get to see it. However, you can edit the settings of the connector. You don't get to see the connector itself. You can't see the resource. Just, I don't know if anybody has seen. Azure does, sometimes address the mystery. There are some things you just create and you wonder where it is. But
you just have to
it's more
believe.
like a service to you. So you don't get to see the underlying infrastructure. It's just a service that is available to you, which is why you do see this, and you can always edit it. If you go to that connector, like I said, and click on settings, you can change it in case you want to change maybe the settings or whatever it is it has access to. Or you want to delete the connector, you can take it out. So if you uninstall it on your GitHub environment, it doesn't connect to your GitHub anymore, and this connector fails, and you can delete the connector. But the underlying resource itself, it is maxed out. You don't get to see it.
All right. Awesome. That's in line. I'm still running mine. I'm sure it will give me some interesting things I don't know about my repositories. So, but thank you for sharing.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anyone else?
In terms of pricing,
the question?
In terms of pricing, because I'm trying to check it on the Defender for Cloud workload protection pricing, but I'm not able to identify that DevOps security. So,
okay. So usually,
how is the pricing?
If you go to Microsoft Defender for Cloud, on this cloud security tab, there are so many levels of security, and you see the level of security there.
In terms of the pricing, is that plan, how much is that one per month, kind of a thing? Because I see the other plans, they're normally priced for a month. Yeah, the price for using DevOps security, because I know it's a plan under Defender for Cloud.
It's a plan, yes. So you have to enable the plan itself. If you go to overview,
because also I'm having a quick look at the Azure pricing calculator. I'm not able to identify. I don't know.
You can always, if you open your overview, you should see your Defender for Cloud MSP plan. You can choose that. That's going to give you access. But usually by default, you should see your DevOps security even without enabling it, even without any connector. Because it's until you connect to it that it starts charging you and starts doing some things for you. But normally you should be able to see it in your default Defender for Cloud. You can connect with me maybe outside the call, then we can check that. Well, usually to log in, you see.
Yeah, so just to jump in there, Tim, I think what Albert is asking is about especially around costing. So what is the cost of using this DevOps security feature? What's the cost?
Okay, so
because
for
Microsoft
the costing, usually for this particular costing, if you go to environment settings and you see your cost calculator open, and you use an existing environment. So let's so this is what is connected to it. So I have to find okay, now I see what Albert is talking about.
Yeah,
it's not really
because
that's okay, yeah, I can see that.
Okay. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, maybe it's something
look for it later. It's fine.
Okay, yeah, maybe when someone gets that information around the pricing, you can just drop it in this chat as well for all of us to know, because yeah, Microsoft being Microsoft, there's nothing for free.
It's actually for free, because I've been running for a long time and I have not been charged to.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I've been running this on my personal environment for more than 3 months now.
Okay.
My last build included.
Okay.
Since you have 2 minutes, we can confirm unless you have any other question. If not, you can just check on a subscription to see how much that costs. Maybe the cost for January.
So if you come to the Defender for Cloud overview, you can always look for costing. There's always some information on I think I dropped the link in the chat. There's always something in there that's going to tell you about the costing and
yeah. I just wanted to see on your subscription, because you have mentioned that you have had that one on for the last 3 months. Just want to see the costing for January.
Oh,
if you can go back to your Azure and then
to
cost analysis of that particular subscription that you linked your that connector.
Sorry. Yeah, let me show you my last invoice.
Just say accumulated one is fine, and then we'll have the filters. You're not able to see. Okay. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. No worries. We'll just look, dig deep in terms of the costing.
This month, right? As you can see, it's not listed yet.
Virtual machine, storage. Okay. All right. It's fine.
So
Thank
this
you.
is only for my virtual machine and my virtual network and the other container instance that I actually deployed.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, then looks like it might be free.
Yeah, it might be free, but I think you need to be on a particular dependent for cloud plan to
Okay.
But it might be free. Yeah.
Maybe if anyone, you or anyone on the call gets some more information around pricing or just documentation that supports it, then we can just share in these Teams chat. I'm sure it will be helpful. Okay, but yeah, because of time, I just once again want to thank you, Tim, for such an insightful session. And myself, I've learned a lot, a couple of things. I've taken my notes here, and I'm also just eagerly waiting for this to complete running on my repository so that I can judge myself. and so forth. But for now, just before we close off, I'd just like you to turn it over to you for your parting shot and your closing remarks before we can call it a night. But thanks again, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, everybody. So, like I said, this is if you have any question, you can submit your survey here. I'll be glad to get back to you. You can reach me out on LinkedIn. If you want any more information around this, even around GitHub Actions as a whole, because I've been dedicating more time around GitHub Actions and I've been seeing so many things. Oh, this is that. So if you have anything, if you want to collaborate, you can reach out to me, and we happy to connect with you. And thank you everybody for having me. Thank you everybody for joining this call. I really enjoyed this session. It was interactive, and yes, thank you. Hopefully, I get to have more sessions to bring more things to you. But thank you for joining today. I really appreciate your time and your efforts for being here.